Oh shit, we're live.
You're listening to War for Idiots, a podcast by idiots for idiots.
Now that voice at the start, that's not a recording, is it?
No. We drag
She comes in every time. Yeah,
Comes in every time it does it.
Consistency, man. Every time sounds the same. It's amazing.
Yeah, seems to hate it. Whoa, I just where's the video? Give me the live video. Oh yeah, there we are. And we have 0 viewers right now. We're heroes.
0 heroes. Mine's not up yet. It's not up on mine. Hurry up. No, it's not up yet. I don't think you got it up. I don't think it's going live. This is definitely not live.
I'm watching it live right now.
Definitely not watching it live. You're watching something else live.
It's live.
Are you watching like a Leonardo DiCaprio video? And
No. It took me a little bit. Like I'm chatting. We've got 3 people watching us.
Oh.
And only 2 of them are us.
Well, I'm not, because I'm not watching it at the moment. So there you go. So we just added a third of our viewers' numbers. All right, let's get this bad boy started.
We have.
Play the intro music.
We've started. Let's just everyone who listens.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, podcast listeners from all of around the world, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of War for Idiots. It is indeed WFI Friday.
WFI, or is it? Oh no, that's the saying. Yeah, WFI Friday. Thank God it's WFI Friday. Sorry, man. I'm trying to multitask here.
It's already called War for Idiots. You don't have to continually prove how right that is.
I'm saying hello to Beck and Phil. I'm sorting out our specials. Mate, everyone knows who the real brains is behind this episode.
As always,
who does the intro?
As always, we are your hosts. My name is Rich the Sumph.
And I am Mick the Dotty Pole. I don't even know what the fuck that means.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it means idiot.
I just Googled olden words for idiots and they came up. And we are indeed the idiots that you have been looking for. And today we are looking and talking about the South China Sea. Very, very interesting topic. Very controversial, very contemporary, but with a long, long history as well. It is something that I think
everyone sort of knows where it is.
It's South China, right? I'm very much looking forward to talking about this because it's been fascinating. It's blown my mind, some of the stuff that I've read about.
Your mind brain?
It blew my mind brain, and I am super, super ready to do it. But before we do, let's talk about you, our dear listeners. Thank you, listeners. I've got some sad news to tell you. And that is that we are at the very far tail end of season 2. We are in episode 18. We have officially beaten the record for season 1 of how many episodes we've gotten out, but the season does end. We've only got a handful left to go, and then that will be us done for season 2. So, dear listener, the show is about to end for this season, but you can still help us continue to grow and get ready for potentially a season 3.
I thought you meant the show was ending tonight. Sorry.
What you can do is tell a friend, share us on social media, comment, get involved. That's why we do this. Spread the word, but don't spread COVID. Mick,
hopefully we don't use that in season 3 when we record season 3 next year.
Oh my God, I hope we don't have to talk about COVID in season 3. That would be amazing. How is your non-COVID life going, Mick Cook?
Mate, I nearly got COVID today.
Okay, do explain.
I just had a meeting with people from out of town, so I'm racking that up as a close call.
Yeah, I went and got the boys' haircuts the other day.
Oh, you nearly got COVID.
I almost got COVID. No, and people would come in, and the hairdresser was just like, "Have you been to so and so town, which had a one COVID case?" They're like, "Oh, we went near there." Nah, go somewhere else. Like it was like proper strict.
Yeah, I can understand, man, because one of their hairdressers, like a barber or a hairdresser, gets COVID, the business shuts down, right?
That's it. That's what she was saying. She's like, we've got 8 people at work here. They've got this many hours. It takes one person, blah, 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 blah. So
I've heard Braidwood Bakery got slammed for not having social distancing.
I don't know. What's the Braidwood Bakery?
It's a popular bakery that's
Oh.
outside of the ACT.
Yeah, right.
Been there for a
Okay.
while, but I'm pretty sure it's on the way to the coast. So it's like really popular.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, apparently like the bakery got slammed because they're not enforcing it a lot because all the drive-through tourists just flood in there. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
gotta be strict with some of these people. It's hard.
you got to be strict. It's hard, and it's getting hard because it's getting long in the tooth. People are tired. People just want to go back to what life was like before. But we are at the very start of this. They said we are a long way from the end, and I still think we're a long way from the end. But I think some people just kind of forget that sometimes that this is a marathon, certainly not a sprint. But anyway, this episode is not about COVID. It is
I
about
don't even like running sprints.
it is about the South China Sea. So let's get into it. And before we do, we always like to start our episode by throwing a bit of love to our good friends and sponsor of the show, Good to Go Gear, G2G. Now, Good to Go Gear is an Australian veteran-owned business that has been supporting its customers for well over a decade. Whether you are into military, camping, adventure, workwear, or first aid, they have a wide range that is ready to be shipped directly to you. Check out their catalog. Go to www.goodtogogear.com.au and get the best gear that is G2G. You will not be disappointed. This catalog is growing. There's such cool stuff on there. The prices are great and it delivers straight to you. And if you're unhappy with it, the good news is they offer a 30-day, 100% satisfaction guarantee, and they ship both to Australia and the US of A. Likely, if it's going to America, it's going through the South China Sea. More about that in a minute.
And it's probably going to be COVID proof because it's coming from Australia.
So what are you waiting for? Rhetorical question. Or maybe not. Go and check out Good to Go Gear. That's Good to Go Gear, G2G gear. That is truly good to go. And as you can see, as always, Mick and I are sporting our Good to Go Gear merchandise. I'm wearing the brown undershirt, wicking, great material. I love it. And Mick is wearing the blue long sleeve t-shirt, great for exercising, and was the catalyst of my awkward conversation with someone at work who I saw wearing one. And I started talking to him and said, "Hey, good to go." And he was just like, "What are you doing? Who are you?" I was like, "Oh, right. Not everyone knows that."
Mate, I was gonna wear this jogging today. But I didn't go jogging. So
yeah, so you just wore it.
So that's a problem with all my sports stuff. I don't do sports, but I'll tell you what, it's a bloody comfortable shirt. I pretty much spend half my week wearing these shirts because they're so easy to put on, so easy to wash. You only have to wash them once a year. It's excellent.
It's disgusting.
No, like think about it. Like if you only wash them once a year, you can wash them with your underwear.
Yeah, good. That's disgusting. Okay, let's talk about the South China Sea. Let's look at the media. So on The Guardian.
They're always right.
From theguardian.com on Wednesday.
Baker in it.
On Wednesday, an article entitled "Australia to Step Up South China Sea Defence Cooperation with the US, but won't commit to patrols." Extract from that article. The two allies have also decided during high-level talks in Washington to set up a working group to push back at false information across the Indo-Pacific region, warning that state-sponsored malicious disinformation and interference in democratic processes are significant and evolving threats. The article goes on. Payne and the Defense Minister, Linda Reynolds, agreed in face-to-face talks with their US counterparts, Mike Pompeo and Mark Esper, to continue, quote, increased and regularized maritime cooperation, end quote, in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, bilaterally and in concert with other like-minded and regional partners. So very recent news from this week. As we know, the Australian Defense Minister went over to America to strengthen ties, and the South China Sea was certainly something that they talked about. Now, Mick, yesterday in the South China Morning Post, I asked you this question. Is this a coincidence?
You asked me this in the South China Post. I don't read it, mate. So
is this a coincidence? This article reads, US-China relations, PLA bombers carry out attack exercise in the South China Sea. The article reads, Chinese bombers took part in a high-intensity exercise over the South China Sea, Beijing said on Thursday. Just 2 weeks after two US aircraft carrier strike groups conducted drills of their own in the disputed waters. The exercise was part of the Chinese military's regular operations to boost its combat readiness. Spokesman Ren Guohuang said he. He did not specify the exact location of the drill or say when it took place. Meanwhile, the PLA Southern Theatre Command said on Thursday that a naval fleet of 3 frigates, the Louis Panshu, Guizhong, and the Mizhua, took part in a drill in the South China Sea earlier this month. The increase in military maneuvers comes amid a sharp uptick in tensions between China and the United States over the strategic waterway. So this is a topic that is hot off the press yesterday and the day before. America and Australia committing to increase their presence there, and whilst China is also conducting more and more military maneuvers, a show of force, if you will. Mick, what do you know about the South China Sea?
Mate,
And if you say it's to the south of China, we're done. We're done. We're finished.
I was going to say it's a body of water, south of China. Just those 2 articles you mentioned, the technical support crew have chucked up the links in the chat box. Also, they chucked up a link to the TV show The Guardian with Simon Baker in it. Just pretty good show.
We went to uni with Simon Baker's little brother.
We did too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm going to go tell. I forgot about that.
He told me a story when he went to the Logies with his bigger brother, and he was just like, "Oh my god!" And he met Danny Minogue. Anyway, we'll do an episode on that.
All right. Sorry.
sorry to
Mate, so South China Sea. One thing that I know that we're probably going to cover it, but one thing that I find fascinating about South China Sea is how bloody crowded it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you don't see this in a lot of the news articles when they do pictures of it. In fact, the articles we're talking about, or the ones we're talking about, the photos on them don't show how crowded it is. So much of the world's trade goes through the South China Sea that when we talk about things, and we'll discuss freedom of navigation operations and the idea of contestability within that body of water, it's not as simple as just sailing around one ship or one fleet, or I want to say the word flotilla. I don't know if it's right, but it's a good word. Sailing around a flotilla, because there are so many waterborne obstacles in the forms of merchant shipping, fishermen, and then other countries trying to do their freedom of navigation ops. So that's probably most of what I know. I do know the term 9-dash lines, pretty important when you're talking about South China Sea.
We'll definitely talk about that.
And that I'm just glad that this is going to sound really bad. I'm just glad I don't live in a nation that is small and has a normal territorial claim on parts of the South China Sea that would not be as controversial elsewhere in the globe. Because we have the United Nations customary law of the sea. We have an understanding of how far sea territory boundaries exist or should exist, but the dispute in the South China Sea is because everyone's so close and jammed in together. And it doesn't really seem like some of the bigger players are being reasonable in how the negotiations, and when I say negotiations, sometimes it's just telling people, right? So I find it fascinating. Brendan Taylor is a pretty good Australian academic who's written a book that's got bits of this in the floor flashpoints. The 4 flashpoints is a really good book. So I'll get tech support to put that up in the list as well. That's probably it. That's me done. So
Dave Duckett just popped up in the chat.
Yeah, we're talking about boats.
Blast from the past. We are going to talk about so much naval stuff in a minute, Dave. You're gonna be in a very, very comfortable place.
I don't even remember what service he's in. He's been in them all. So
he's been in all of them. That's right. Okay, so South China Sea. A lot of tension, a lot of contention, but the thing that's iconic to me about the South China Sea is the island building. And we'll get into the island building, but just the concept of building an island. Like Dubai has built land masses, but that's off a desert and they're surrounded by sand. But what China is doing in the South China Sea with regards to building islands, amazing. And we will talk about it, the tension that it has created and everything around that in just a minute. But let's start from the start. And talk about
Let's
to
not start
talk about the South China Sea. So what and where is the South China Sea? So Wikipedia, South China Sea is the marginal sea that is part of the Pacific Ocean, encompassing an area from the Karimata and Malacca Straits to the Strait of
Malacca.
Taiwan.
Malacca Straits. Jeez.
Malacca, how do you say it?
Malacca.
That's what I said. Of around 3.5 million square kilometers. Another description, this one from, how's this for a blast from the past?
How bad would have been the guy who had to measure it, though, and walk out?
Oh my God. Yeah. How's this for a blast from the past? Britannica.com, the Britannica Encyclopedias.
What's that?
Oh
yeah. They're holding up heaps of coffee tables and stuff now.
From them, South China Sea, in Chinese known as the Nanhai, arm of the Western Pacific Ocean that borders the Southeast Asian mainland. It is bounded to the northeast by the Taiwan Strait, to the east by Taiwan and the Philippines, to the southeast and south by Borneo, the southern limit of the Gulf of Thailand, the east coast of the Malay Peninsula, and to the west and north by the Asian mainland. As Mick said, this is a contested area. The South China Sea, say again?
You should check that stuff on Wikipedia.
The South China Sea and the East China Sea together form the China Sea, the southern boundary between Sumatra and Borneo. It's big. It's big. Okay, so how big is it? As we said before, 3.5 million square kilometers. Now, just to contextualize that, Australia is 7.5 million square kilometers. So about half the size of Australia, if you will, is this contested area. Now, just take that into context with regards to, that's a big area of landmass. If you could picture that in your head, that is now over the sea. And then Mick described before that is heavily congested with shipping, with navies, with small islands, reefs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very large, complex area. How large does it represent? Well, if it's 3.5 million square kilometers, the Pacific Ocean is 155.5 million square kilometers. So when we talk about the Pacific, it's huge. So this is actually quite a small part of the Pacific. But if you want to just contextualize it with a land mass, you can really think of India. So if you just think of India, India is 3.29 million square kilometers, which has really helped me frame the size of this problem.
It's bigger than India.
So it's bigger than India. So there was a landmass, right? That if there was India, and let's just say that the vast majority of the world's trade goes directly through India, every person would be greatly concerned about what is happening in that place, right? So what we have now is it's sea. So the vast majority of the world's trade goes through this one South China Sea, which is the same size. A lot of people are worried about it, but I think some people underestimate how significant the size of it is and how significant the strategic importance of something like the South China Sea is. So that's the South China Sea. Those are all the countries that border it. And as you said, it's contested, physically contested, and as we'll go through now, strategically contested as well. So, what's so important about the South China Sea? Well, the vast majority of what you'll find is going to be around trade and economics and how the world, rotates with regards to globalization and trade. All right. So according to CSIS, the Center of Strategic and International Studies, one of the top think tanks in America, the United Nations Conference and Trade Development estimates that roughly 80% of global trade by volume and then 70% by value is transported by sea. Of that volume, 60% of the maritime trade passes through Asia. So in essence, the South China Sea carries an estimated 1/3 of global shipping. That just blew my mind. So it is such a small part of the Pacific Ocean. 155 is Pacific Ocean. This is 3.5, right? 3.5. And it takes 1/3 of the global shipping. It just blew my mind when I read that.
South China Sea, you're doing good, buddy. Like, don't ever let anyone say.
You know what? People talk a lot of shit about the South China Sea. They're doing their part.
No one's sitting there just going, "What's the South China Sea done for me lately?" No one is ordering off Amazon going, "What is the South China?" You know why you've got an iPhone? Because of the South China Sea.
That's right. So the waters are particularly critical for China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, all of which rely on the Straits of Malacca, which connects the South China Sea and by extension the Pacific Ocean with the India Ocean. The Straits of Malacca and the South China Sea are incredibly important to China for trade. So, as we said, incredibly, incredibly important. Now, the Straits of Malacca, have you heard of the Straits of Malacca before? I assume you have.
Yeah.
I've heard of them. I hadn't really read too much about it, so I
Studied,
had a look into it. What's that? Sorry.
We when we were at uni, or maybe I don't know if you were in the part that covered this, but we covered it in naval choke points.
Yeah, right. So absolutely a naval choke point.
Yeah.
A lot of
You can kind of
articles.
go around it, but geez,
Yeah,
like
so
what a trip.
there's a lot of articles around it. A lot of articles call it China's Malacca dilemma, and articles dating, a decade or so ago, that this is a problem that China faces because it is literally their choke point, of which they rely on the vast majority of their resources. So an article here from isdp.eu called "Alleviating China's Malacca Dilemma." Beijing is seeking alternate routes to reduce its dependence on the waterway to ensure a more viable long-term energy security policy. In 2003, the then president Hu Jintao identified the need to mitigate what he termed China's Malacca dilemma. Now, they've got a whole bunch of alternate ways that they're trying to get around the Straits of Malacca under the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, which is something they've been working on for a few years now. They've got Trans-Myanmar oil and gas line pipes. They've got port in Burmese water. There's the Pakistan-China economic corridor that they're trying to develop. There's a couple of land bridges that they're doing to build oil pipelines. So there's a lot that they're trying to do to bridge the gap. But according to this author, B.A. Hamza, who's a lecturer at the Department of Strategic Studies and National Defense University in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, the Straits of Malacca are going to be important for the rest of the existence because there's so much, right? They might
Until we
take
go nuclear and machines kill us, but
that's right. But there's so much going through there. It's inevitable. China's Malacca dilemma is going to be there for a long time. So, what we're establishing is that not only is this strait, South China Sea, and especially this strait, important to China, to the world, it is important to China for their survival. And this will become apparent as we get towards the end of this show and we start talking about to what end are we doing freedom of navigation operations? To what end is everyone so angry at China for what they're doing in the straits?
And just checking in with Andrew Carr, who's going apoplectic on YouTube. I think he might have even had someone.
It's not a choke point. Here we go.
Because it's not a choke point. Because Andrew might have actually convened the course that we did where they told us there wasn't a choke point. So there are actually I think there's only 2 actual choke points in the globe. The Straits of Hormuz being one. But what we're saying is that it's a choke point within its region. Like you can go around it, got it, but it forces a lot of major economical decisions. So sure, it's not technically a choke point because you can go around it, but it's our show, Andrew, so we're going to call it a choke point.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't disagree with Andrew Carr. I'm just going to get that on the record. And there's another part of the of the Malacca dilemma as well, which we won't focus on too much. But that is, of course, China and China control and the contest that China is currently having in the South China Sea. To the east of the Malacca Straits is something that's talked about a lot. But what is sometimes not talked about is what is to the west of the Malacca Straits. And that is, of course, the Indian Ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another article that I stumbled across, which is from EurasianTimes.com, entitled "India Can No Longer."
Asian Times? Or Eurasian Times?
Eurasian Times. And this is called "India Can No Longer Choke China in the Straits of Malacca as Beijing Finds Solution." All the opposite of what B.A. Hamza says in the article that we read before. It's all about how China is finding alternatives to using the Malacca Strait. India's natural position in the Indian Ocean, with basing capabilities in Andaman and Nicobar Islands at the mouth of the strait, would allow its navy to cut it off in the event of a crisis or war with China. Keeping in mind the recent flare-up between India and China, if India wanted to block trade with China, all it has to do is park ships at the mouth of the Malacca Strait. So there's also that aspect of it as well. And this is just a fascinating conversation about geography. And, you know, I remember when we were doing universities and we started talking about geopolitics and geography, everyone sort of moaned and groaned and was just absolutely bored by the concept, because it's not really the sexy part of warfare, why people go to war, the politics of it, you know, the backstabbing.
It's not the cybers. It's not the cybers.
No, it's not.
Machine learning. It's not the robots.
No, but the South China Sea is
It's just the ground.
it's such a great thing to talk about, because you have a piece of geography. Now let's talk about the Malacca Straits, right? So it's 850 kilometers straight. I had an article here that says, this is from defenceconnect.com.au, and it says that approximately 100,000 vessels pass through this strait annually, which is not, you know, nothing to sort of snigger at. That's a lot of stuff. At its narrowest point, it's 2.7 kilometers wide. It is a very congested area. It's got piracy, control issues, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great example of this one piece of geography that's so vitally important to the world due to the trade that it has going on through there.
Mm-hmm.
And in and amongst it, there's two countries, and then the wider part of it, the South China Sea. There's just so many countries that are contesting over this one area. So it's a fascinating sort of insight into geography, and that's why I think South China Sea is super important. So what have we established?
It's super choky too.
So we've established that the South China Sea is important for trade and for the world economy. All right. So whoever controls the South China Sea arguably has the ability to control the world economy. Now, that doesn't really make sense, because right now it's contested. The world economy is going fine. But what if?
Well, let's clarify. Fine. We're not talking about the world economy being affected by COVID here. So, like, we understand the economy's in the toilet, but it's not because of the South China Sea.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Relatively fine. Okay. Relatively.
Yeah, I mean, it's going perfectly fine as long as your country is willing to accept over 100,000 deaths. You'll be fine.
But what happens in a escalated situation, in a conflict on a global scale, where suddenly a country A decides that they no longer want other countries to control or to have a globalized economy, to get resources from other nations? This is something that could happen, and you just have to look at a very quick glance at World War I and World War II, and have a look at how controlling of shipping was essentially a great part of how we would go on to win those wars as well. So this is not a situation that hasn't occurred in recent history, and that's something that sort of is sort of over the top of the whole Malacca Straits and the South China Sea. Now, for Australia, it's doubly important, because it is our lifeline to the world, if you will, of how we get all of our stuff and how I get all my stuff from Amazon.
We get all our stuff.
I get really upset. So what else is there? There's also an abundance of resources. So there's reports that untapped fishing, untapped oil, a whole bunch of resources. So we're looking at not only control for the sake of the economy, we're looking at resources that are currently contested, or who owns those resources at the moment also plays into it as well. There's also the control of it because of the influence that you have over the countries that share a coastline with this same seabed as well. And this now suddenly starts to affect many, many, many countries in the Southeast Asia region. And in many ways, we start seeing that there's a bit of power play happening here. The countries that are aligned with the USA are getting the support. China is unhappy with it. So again, we are back to our hegemonic battle over this piece of territory, the same battle that we've seen over many, many other territories that we've spoken about during this podcast. So look, a very interesting case study to go into. That's the kind of background of where is the South China Sea, why it's important, before we get into some of the politics into it. Mick, how say you?
I'm talking to people on the internet.
Yeah. I can see because you don't look in the camera. You look everywhere.
All right, fine. Oh, okay, I'll fix that. Now that everyone's lost their dinner. Look, I think, and you talked about it before when you said, geography is not the sexy part of studying war and politics, but it's probably one of the most consistent parts of how geography affects defense planning, military posturing, politics. So as we go on, listeners, I typed a smart comment in there responding to Dave saying that he no longer does controls shipping lanes, which is my way of saying he used to be in the Navy. But land-based maritime strike. When you think of land-based maritime strike capabilities, in ye old terms, this used to be called coastal artillery, but now the ranges on land-based maritime strike are exceptionally large compared to that, hundreds of kilometres. So if you can put land-based maritime strike on something like the Straits of Malacca, you don't need maritime-based assets to have a significant political effect and a military effect. So as we're going through this, understand how geography really limits options for people. This is geography controlling economic outputs. So geography is often seen as boring. Generally, people in the army kind of like geography because we spend so much time reading maps and stuff. Oh, sorry, charts. Charts for those Navy people.
Charts for Navy people, yeah.
I think it's really interesting to understand that. And those people who are following the Australia's latest Defence Strategic Update, they should really listen to my interview with Andrew Carr, actually, and him talking about Australian defence policy and how there's always been a tension between history and geography and how geography is almost being seen to have won out because Australia's defence policy is very much looking at how it can use its geography for its benefit. So I think that's one of the most important things you said. I didn't really listen to the rest of it.
Good.
That was good.
Situation is no change. All right. So we're going to talk about the history of the South China Sea. And this is the context that gets us to where we are today. And this has been a very, very interesting part of putting these show notes together. Before we do, let's talk about our good sponsors at Extra Specialist Group. Now, if you haven't heard of the Extra Specialist Group before, they are awesome. Since 2017, the Extra Specialists, these guys have been connecting Australian veterans to the entertainment industry through their consultancy work, their agency work, productions and training. Extra Specialists have been changing the face of television and movies and putting those who have served onto the big screen and into your homes. They're not just a small little backyard company. They have worked with the big names, Marvel, Touchstone, Netflix, Stan, and many, many more.
For idiots.
Yeah, War for Idiots, the big one. Extra Specialist is the place to go if you want to get into the industry. So if you have extra specialist skills, veteran or anything else, or you want to learn some, doesn't have to be a veteran. You can just be any regular Joe or Jane and want to just get into it. Reach out to Extra Specialist Group and get started now. Check out their website at www.extraspecialists.com. And if you don't follow them on Facebook, I would recommend it. They put up some pretty cool videos of some pretty cool training that they do. Pistol shooting, high ropes training, action fight sequences. And, as we said in one of the film reviews that we did about Danger Close, seeing the guys and girls who supported us when we are serving, being into these movies. It's fascinating. It's awesome. And I just loving the work that these guys do with our veterans.
They do also take people who have other names than Joe and Jane. But that's just an illustrative example.
That doesn't say that on their website. Okay. So let's talk about the South China Sea. Let's talk about tension. Let's talk about the history. Now,
I want to see Dave Duckett in a film.
That'd be awesome. Doing some Krav Maga.
Krav Maga.
So I don't want to surprise you too much, but the South China Sea has been there for a very long time.
2 years.
Right?
Minimum.
No, like really long.
Minimum. I said minimum.
That's true. That's something. Technically. Okay. So, but we're not going to go into the deep history of it.
I do not want to go into how
this podcast it all started with molecules. No. So this, so we're going to start it
for idiots.
We're going to start it from around World War II. Okay.
Well,
the vast majority of what we're talking about is based around the two chains of islands, the Spratly and the Paracel Islands. Okay. Now in 1927, Japan makes its earliest documented claim over the Paracel and Spratly Islands. Why is Japan making a claim for them? You got to rewind your knowledge about what Japan is going through at this point in time, but they make their claim in 1927. Now in 1928, the Republic of China states that the Paracel Islands are the southernmost limits of its territory. So immediately,
it's like, no, we claimed them last year, dude.
Yeah. Japan's like, we've officially done it, and China's like, cool, so have we, right?
Don't make us invade you.
Then in 1931, France claims the Paracel Islands, right? And
Come
just there, in a 4-year little snapshot, WFI, WTF, you know what I mean?
I mean, well, the Paracel Islands are extremely close to Europe.
Yes, they are. They are arguably in them.
It's probably quicker to go through the Earth to get to France from the Paracel Islands than to go over the ocean. Come on,
hundreds
frog.
of islands, complex terrain, lots of reefs, but strategically important nonetheless. Okay,
and
fast forward.
Big part of France.
A big part of France. Fast forward to 1939, Japan invades the islands and takes control of the South China Sea. As we know, when did World War II start? Well, it depends who you ask. In this instance, we have Japan invading and taking the islands in 1939. Done. So Japan occupies them for that period of time. End of World War II. We fast forward to 1945. The Republic of China government accepts the surrender of the Japanese garrisons in Taiwan. And this also includes the Paracel and Spratly Islands. And then Nanjing then declares both these archipelagos are part of the Guangdong province. So they're officially claimed by China, having accepted the surrender of Japan, part of the Guangdong province.
What is France in all this?
Right. And so this is interesting. So the Republic of China drew up the Southern China Sea Island location map, marking the national boundaries in the sea with 11 lines, showing the U-shaped claim of the entire South China Sea and showing the Spratly and parcels in Chinese territory in 1947. Now, this is interesting, right? The Americans, we own this bit, okay? And of course, other countries are pissed, right? Yeah. But this article goes on. The Americans reminded the Philippines at its independence in 1946 that the Spratlys was not Philippine territory, both to not anger Chiang Kai-shek in China and because the Spratlys were not part of the Philippines per the 1898 treaty Spain signed with America. So, I mean...
That's not your country because that's not. Hey, Philippines, that's not your country because we didn't agree with Spain that was your country.
Exactly. Is there any wonder that there's so much? And this is in 1940, so we've got a lot of time to cover from here on. But even then, there's so much tension and so much confusion about who owns it. Now it gets more confusing, right? So if you want to add in more to the mix, you throw in the Vietnam War. So in 1954, the Geneva Accords settled the First Indochina War. French Indochina was split into 3 countries, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Vietnam, of course, was divided across the 17th parallel. And in 1955, South Vietnam was established as part of the French Union. Okay, so there we have a divided Vietnam on the Southeast Asian coast. Now, Vietnam is the longest island is the longest country with a coastline that is the South China Sea. Now, with both the Spratlys and the Paracels being south of the 19th parallel, they fall within South Vietnam territory. And the French, again, bestow their rights and claims over both island chains to the Republic of Vietnam. So the French are back in the picture again and have claimed those islands.
They never had it right. Like, so it's like me saying to your next door neighbor, Richie's car's now yours. And you're like, hang on.
What?
That's my car. Like, no, I claim your car and now I donate it to someone.
And then in 1956, against this, I don't want to shock you, but the North Vietnamese Communist government formally accept that the islands are in fact historically Chinese.
That's like your other neighbor coming out and going, no, that car belongs to that guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy confusing. Okay, and then it gets more confusing. So we fast forward in time a little bit more, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in between this, but just the wave tops. 1971.
Elvis becomes big.
That's 1971, the Philippines announced claims to islands adjacent to its territory. So islands that are within the Spratlys, but close to them, and then much fighting ensues. There's a lot of...
Love how you've written that in the show notes. Much fighting
ensues between the Philippines, China, Vietnam. And Vietnam. And in 1978, the president of the Philippines asserts that what he's calling now the Kalayaan Island Group, comprising most of the Spratly Islands, are actually subject to Filipino sovereignty. And then in 1979, Hanoi now under a united Vietnam, in fact, claim sovereignty over all the islands in the South China Sea.
Hey,
And
John,
you
you
can
know those
see-
islands we said were yours? They're ours.
No, they're now Vietnam's. They're now Vietnam's. Okay. So where the tension and look, it goes through the 80s, it goes in through the 90s, lots more fighting. But what we see is that as these countries grow, so Vietnam grew through its civil war, through the Vietnam War into a united Vietnam, finding its own feet, will turn against China in this instance, and a lot of fighting will ensue over the next 20 years over the South China Sea. The Philippines has now its independence. It's growing on a world stage. It is also now putting its bid in for fighting over areas of the South China Sea and the Spratlys and the Parasols as well. We then have a Indonesia that's rising into power, and then we'll also put it. So all these countries are growing. The tension is growing. The skirmishes, the near misses, the boat collisions, the fishermen's fighting is growing and growing and growing. And as countries find their feet on the global scale, so too do they find their claim over parts of the South China Sea. So it's
bananas, man. It's bananas.
It's absolutely bananas. Now that was just a quick, I don't know how long that went for, 9 minutes sort of highlight of some of the history that we got through of the background of the South China Sea. But is there any surprise of the confusion when this is where it's growing? And it reminds me so much of how Europe was divided just over these lines that was just drawn sort of where they wanted.
Afghanistan, the Middle East.
Claims.
The Middle East, other people coming in and going, this is where the border should be. And some dude's just like, that's right through the center of my house.
Exactly.
It's just like,
exactly. And,
it's probably not going to take. It's like, the Pashtun region of Afghanistan, Pakistan. Like, let's just go straight between the tribal areas.
As you said before, you talked about the importance of geography. As important as geography is it's as important to remember the craziness that humans apply over geography.
Human and cultural geography. It's a thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then saying, let's put all our trade through that.
Yes, yeah. Now through that shit fight, everything goes through. Like, that is crazy, man. That is crazy.
Right. Now that we're all in disagreement, let's just push all of our most valuable trade through that area.
Yeah. So a bit of confusion, and we'll continue to highlight some of them now where the lines have sort of fallen. But what has been happening recently has been China's island building, for lack of a better term. I don't know if they're calling it that. But
it's called, I think it's a land reclamation.
Okay, land reclamation, right? And I wanted to quickly touch on that because I thought
it means building islands, right?
I find it fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating. Now, if you go to a website, you'll post the link up for this. So you just did, the Diplomat. So they've done some studies and tried to put some data on some of the islands or land masses that have been built using satellite imagery and measuring the satellite imagery over periods of time, different years and whatnot. And it's amazing. It's just an amazing thing to look at for just a feat of human endeavor to build what they're building out there in the South China Sea. So it was reported in 2015 that China has begun to pump sand onto pre-existing reefs. Okay. Yep. And as I said, satellite imagery is great. And I'll give you one example that they show. It's called the Fiery Cross Reef. Now, they show a picture of the Fiery Cross Reef in 2009. Just looks like a blank piece of ocean. You can't see anything. They use this term of urbanization is the word they use in this measurement. And they give it 0.01 square kilometers of urbanization. So nothing. There's nothing there, right? It's tiny, it's tiny, it's tiny. Then fast forward to April 2015, they show a satellite imagery of what's been built. Crazy. From 0.01 to 0.13 square kilometers urbanization. It's incredible to see the imagery. Fast forward 2 years, September 2017, you have almost 1 square kilometer of urbanization. You have buildings, roads, airfields, ports, almost a square kilometer. And then you check out this stuff. It's fascinating. And then they show another one in the Johnson South Reef that is the same story as well. Now, according to the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission, China has built, and this blew me away, 3,000 acres of island territory within the Spratlys across 7 different reefs, 3,000 acres. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but if it's even close to accurate, that just blows me away because that is just an amazing feat. You know what I mean? I think that's just now terrible for the environment. likely terrible to change the sort of ecosystem that is out there in the Spratlys around the reefs and all that sorts of stuff. But just to be able to do that is pretty incredible. And as you talked about before, what are the second and third order military and strategic sort of ramifications of that? It's pretty significant. It's pretty significant of that island building. Are you interested in this island building or land reclamation that you have called it?
Yeah, man, I have to be because you put it in the show notes.
Be
No, mate,
more-
I think it's hard, right? Because like I don't agree with them doing it as a unilateral action. I don't necessarily agree with it environmentally, but I'd have to look into more of the environmental implications. But I'm sure there are some. Who knows? China's actually not aware of climate change, and they're making a lot of measures too on renewable energy and sustainability that lots of other countries aren't. But what a remarkable piece of engineering.
Yes. Yeah.
And it kind of talks about, and I'll talk about this a bit on that other show I do that's far more popular than this one. Just imagine if we applied like some of this sort of engineering power for good, for the purposes of the best of humanity, right? Because the basics is this land is being reclaimed as a power grab. But we have other nations that are going to sink below the seas because of climate change. What sort of engineering can we do to support those countries? Because there's experts in China at building islands. Like, some of us play computer games to be able to build islands. This is world building stuff. But it is when you jump on and have a look at some of the islands that have been created, ladies and gents. Now you'll see why a lot of naval and air force people simply consider the land aircraft carriers. Because some of the islands look like a stationary aircraft carrier. They're just airfields. And when you think about that in terms of permanent force projection, you have infantry. They seize and hold ground. You can force project with air. You can force project with maritime. How's China doing it? They're force projecting with land, not land forces. Actual land.
Beat that.
Beat that. Insane. Fascinating stuff. And
it is fascinating.
While you're talking, I was just flicking through the pictures. I actually was listening this time.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. The imagery is shocking, isn't it?
So insane. He's like, there's nothing there. Oh, it's a city.
Yes. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right. So where does it lay now? So after this history that we talked about, after this island building, what are the current borders within the South China Sea? Well, like you asked, because there's not many of them to go through. So the main one, and probably the best picture I've seen of this, the source is from the CSIS. People have put together this, but there's heaps out there, South China Sea borders. And the main areas of dispute, if you will, when you look at the South China Sea, is the borders that Vietnam claim and the border that China claims. Because it's almost like if I was to say, hey, Mick, okay, on this table, draw where you think the border is, and I draw my border, you would be so shocked from your perspective how wrong I got the border. And when you draw it, I would be so shocked how wrong you got it. Like the overlap isn't just a slight. It's not a slight overlap. It is a huge overlap. It's an overlap.
I wouldn't get it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I'm not Donald Trump drawing a hurricane path.
So the overlap between the border of Vietnam, where they claim their sovereign parts of the South China Sea, and what China claims, are just unbelievable. That this is, that there's this much confusion over who owns it. Okay, now that's just two countries, right, that have this disputed borders. Now there's a third country that lays their borders over the top of that, and that's of course the Philippines, who lay their claim of where they say their borders are, which include all of the Spratly Islands and also the Scarborough Shoal, which is something we haven't spoken about much, but it's also a part of it as well. So there's parts of the South China Sea that have 3 country borders overlaying them. Now, of course, we have a fourth one that comes from the south. That's from Malaysia. So some of the southern islands that are part of Malaysia, sorry, not part of Malaysia, part of the Spratlys. Malaysia has claimed some of those islands as well. So some of those islands have 4 borders over the top of them: Vietnam, China, the Philippines, and now Malaysia, who are contesting for it. And there's aspects of the Spratlys. Now, I don't think there's any islands, but there's actual parts of the ocean that has a fifth boundary over it, and that is the boundary of Brunei. So there's
that's an amazing boundary because theirs is like a perfect rectangle.
There's this tiny.
Everyone else is like, oh, what do we miss?
And there's just like no, ours is a footy field.
We just want this footy field. Like we're not greedy. They got a lot of money.
It's crazy, and so there's parts of the South China Sea that 5 countries at this point in time in Southeast Asia cannot agree who owns it. And then you have arguably a 6th layer that comes over the top, which is Taiwan, who says, oh, actually, all the Spratlys are our territory. So that's a bit of confusion that you guys have.
Yeah, because we're China, remember?
So it is a really interesting piece of terrain. It is a very important piece of terrain. And when you just see who thinks they own what, my eyes are suddenly wide open to no wonder there's so much confusion. No wonder there's so much tension. No wonder there's so much action happening there at the moment, in and amongst COVID, in and amongst everything that's happening around the world.
I've got a really cool tangent, right? A really cool tangent. There's another island far to the north, near North America and near Denmark, called Han Island, and I'll put the link in there. But just to show how this could be disputed differently, they both claim ownership of this rocky outcrop that doesn't really do much. What they do is they wait until the other country's gone. They then send a expedition who then goes and takes down like the Danish or the Canadian flag, and then puts their national alcohol, schnapps or a type of whiskey, next to the flag, and then runs their own flag up, and then they all just run away. And then the next time they go past the island, they're just like, wait a minute.
Oh,
their flags up. And so they take their bottle and their flag and run their own up. It's insane, right? Like,
yeah.
How come we just can't have that in the China? Like everyone just, because you know what? Everyone just needs to get really drunk and sort this out.
Yeah. And it's the border dispute. And this one is fairly clear. And everyone can kind of see why there's so much disputes of this border, right? Because it's a super important piece of territory. You know, we talked about the border dispute between China and India and the border clash that they had with Tibet and the Dalai Lama and all that sort of stuff in a previous episode. And that one we were really like, to what end? To what end are you guys fighting over this piece of terrain? You know what I mean? And fear, honor, interest, et cetera, et cetera. Are they going to go to war over it? Maybe, who knows?
Not much like the economic.
But there was nothing else but pride that sat on that border. There's so much more that sits on this border. This one is a clear border dispute for clear reasons that don't affect the countries that are claiming the borders. They affect the world, and they affect which countries are backing those countries. And that is why the tension is there. The tension is there to stay until, you know, we get a global community, which is just around the corner, you know, because we all work so well together.
Star Trek too. Hey, who knows? This pandemic might sort everyone out. No.
Yeah. It's going so well. Okay,
so in the US, so.
So where are we at now with the South China Sea? Well, it's still there.
In Canberra.
If an article from theconversation.com explaining why is the South China Sea such a hotly contested region. They highlight the historic decision in 2016. An international tribunal in The Hague ruled against part of China's claim to the sea in a case brought by the Philippines. So The Hague said, hey, China, you do not own those parts of the Spratlys. You need to back down. And of course, China
went, no, we're just going to build our own.
Thanks, Hague. We reject your authority of the tribunal, and we reject the findings of this case. Yes. Another article from 2016 from The Guardian states the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, said China's territorial sovereignty and marine rights in the seas would not be affected by the ruling, which declared large area of the sea to be neutral international waters or the exclusive economic zones of other countries. He insisted China was still committed to resolving disputes with its neighbors. And here's the thing, you know, on a global scale, who is going to tell the superpower that they're not allowed to do something? Well, it's The Hague. It's The Hague. And what's the superpower going to say when The Hague says you can't do that? Okay.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, sure. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
We're
going to go back to build this island now. So we'll see ya.
go before I punch you in the face. Like,
Exactly. So it's, people, we could do a whole episode, I think, on these international committees. How do you put something on top of superpower? I've been reading a lot about hegemony and about realism at the moment versus liberalism. And they talk about, who sits on top of the top. Unless you have something sitting on the top of the top, then it's a more, liberalism isn't a real thing. Anyway, it's a whole thing, which is
liberalism would be nice, and realism's what happens.
exactly. So, and I think this has been a real case of realism right in the front. So what is the world doing? And no, I don't want this to come across that China is doing something bad. China is doing what they're doing, and I think we've made the case that China has huge strategic reasons to be doing what they're doing, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's up for listeners.
Personally, we don't have a claim on the South China Sea.
Not yet.
We might. Well,
because of COVID, obviously.
We've actually got some Sharpies, which is like a marking pen, and a map. And after this episode, we're going to go to the map, and Richard and I are going to work out.
We're going to draw. Yeah, those parts of the Spratlys.
We're going to call it the 6-dash line.
But what is happening there now? So the way that it seems that the tension continues to be played out in the South China Sea is everyone is deeply, deeply reading, and this is going to get Dave Ducker very excited, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, known as the UNCLOS, right? They're reading the UNCLOS, making sure that they understand every aspect of the UNCLOS, and then doing things to ensure that other countries are not abiding by the UNCLOS, or using the fine rules of the UNCLOS to show that they're right and other countries are wrong.
Yeah.
So how are they doing it? And this stuff I found super, super fascinating, right? And this is from, you put it up there, the Belfast Centre, really, really great guide, breaks it down, perfect for idiots like us. What is UNCLOS? What is freedom of navigation operations? Everything that you need to know.
And all those US people who are going to be really like, they should stick to UNCLOS. US is not signatories of it. And I know there's a nice little line here saying, UN foreign policy, strong support exists for ratifying it, and they adhere to many of its provisions. But, when it comes to these debates, you talked about the Hague, right, and recognizing the authority in that. So China, I'm pretty sure, has ratified the UNCLOS, but sometimes doesn't appear to behave in the way that UNCLOS dictates.
Yeah.
The US is trying to hold a lot of people account to UNCLOS, but hasn't ratified it.
Yeah.
Because they don't need to because of who they are, right? Like if you're the big boy,
well, who's going to tell them to? Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, let's talk about.
So I really want to. Sorry.
UNCLOS.
Do we just?
That's just a really cool acronym.
Okay. So the first part of the UNCLOS is that there are maritime features. Now, what I've learned is that a maritime feature is a part of the Earth's surface occurring in the ocean that is not covered by water. The UNCLOS defines 3 of these features.
I thought Midway was a maritime feature.
This will go. Yeah. This is going somewhere. So the first one is an island. The second one is rocks, and the third one is low tide elevations. All right, so there's 3 of them. So what is the distinct difference between these features? The distinction between maritime features is important because each of these 3 features generate different maritime zones. Now, there's 3 basic maritime zones. There's territorial sea, that's within 12 nautical miles. There's contiguous zone, which extends from the 12 nautical miles to a further 12 nautical miles. And then there's the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles. Okay, so this is important context. Why? Because if you are an island, you generate a territorial sea, you generate a contiguous zone, and you generate an exclusive economic zone. Sorry?
I'm not an island. You said
not yet. But if you keep on trying, man, Now, if you are a rock, all right?
I'm a rock.
If so the rock, okay, he generates a contiguous zone, but no exclusive economic zone, rightio.
But Dwayne Johnson has a contiguous zone.
If you are a low tide elevation, you generate nothing unless you are within 12 nautical miles of land. All right. So this is important because within each of the territorial zone, the contiguous zone, and exclusive economic zones have certain rules that things can happen. Okay. So you can't pass through someone's territorial zone unless you first give them warning to do it. In the contiguous zone, you can't be doing military operations. You must be innocent passage through. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can and can't do. Exclusive economic zones are, as the name suggests, where they get their resources from, etc., etc., etc. Now, the question is, if you're an island, the rules are very clear. But what happens if you're an artificial island? So that is the contentious part. And what is happening is that countries like America being the main one is saying artificial islands are not islands. Before you were an artificial island, you were not a rock. You were not an island. You were not the rock even. You were likely a low tide elevation or a reef at best. And as such, we do not have to give you verbal warning before we come sail through your zone, nor do we have to cease from military exercises, activities, show of force whilst we're within your 12-mile territorial sea, which we do not recognize. So they're using the laws of UNCLOS with a fine-tooth comb and saying these laws do not apply to you because you are not what these laws apply to. So we can do whatever we want, and we will.
Sounds like a really smart game to play. They're literally playing chicken between ships and fake islands.
To what end? To what end are they doing this? I'm asking you that, not rhetorically. What are they getting out of this? What is happening here, man?
I mean, a lot of this is about the rules-based global order, and it's about signaling to particular countries that if they want to enter onto the the more dominant aspects of the rules-based global order, if they want to share in a lot of the power, then they need to behave the way that the rules say. And the rules say this, so therefore this is how you need to behave. Now, the problem is that it's a conversation happening between two competing hegemons. And hegemons don't become hegemons because they follow the rules.
Yeah.
Become hegemons because they establish dominance quickly and then set the rules. So at the moment, it's, freedom of navigation operations, or FONOPS, awesome term. It's like UNCLOS, FONOPS, UNCLOS, awesome episode for just really, really cool onomatopoeic words. Although I don't think if you go UNCLOS, people automatically obey the law of the sea, although they might. I'll stop drifting. So, hey, that's a naval term. Oh,
That's good.
So what we're seeing here is the rules-based global order and those adherents to it. Nations like Australia, because Australia's a pretty small nation when it comes to naval punching power, right? But we're still conducting freedom of navigation operations because it's our way of saying, as a middle power, we expect China, because that's usually who these freedom of navigation operations are targeting, but also other nations. We expect you to obey the rules-based global order, and therefore we, as a smaller nation, are still able to conduct this activity without fear, and it's not provocatory. Unfortunately, it sends a very clear message. We're also trying to provoke you into being good and behaving, but obviously you've got to assume that the aspirations of the person you're challenging or provoking, you got to assume their aspirations are to be seen as a good citizen globally, and that they're happy being given a place as opposed to what they would consider earning their place and where that place sits in the global order. So it's complex, hey? And this is what we're talking about, geography, right? This is geography playing with hard line international relations.
Yeah, look, you brought up some good points. The point of the rules-based global order is really important because in this instance, to put it in its very simple terms, right? In 2016, The Hague says some of this stuff that you're doing is not legal in accordance with international law. They have established, in this instance, a rules-based international order, okay? We look at the definition for that. It's described as a shared commitment by all countries to conduct their activities in accordance with agreed rules that evolve over time, such as international law, regional security arrangements, trade agreements, immigration protocols, and cultural arrangements. So the rules have been established, all right? And China has said, no, we don't agree with the findings, so we're going to continue what we're doing. Okay, so America is coming and doing their freedom of navigation operations and actions, and they're saying that we are upholding the rules-based international order. In this instance, very simple terms, what The Hague said in 2016. You are not an island. You do not have territory. We are sailing within that. We're not warning you. We're coming through. So you can kind of see why they're doing it, to kind of say, you won't, hey, China, by us doing this, we're showing the world that you are not following the rules that everyone is agreeing that they're going to follow. Because within a world where there is, a struggle for power, there is no agreed hegemon at the moment. That sort of top of the podium is up for grabs.
Yeah.
There's no one there to lay the rules except for this international order. This is the vision, the version of from the Americans' perspective. Now, from the Chinese perspectives, they're like, America, why are you here? Like this is why are you here?
Exactly right.
This is our territory. We need this territory for our own economy.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So
You look at the tension
I think
between Japan and America over the Pacific Island hegemonic power in the 30s and 40s. Something happened around the late 30s and early 40s.
What was it?
I think
Pokemon.
Humphrey Bogart, a couple of good films. No, a Pokemon. I don't think so.
No,
I think
not
just
that old.
Tamagotchis.
I don't know anything about it.
I mean, Tamagotchi. Well, actually, for listeners that don't have kids, Tamagotchi is really good practice. The idea that the US can be a Pacific hegemon and a hegemon of the Asian side of the Pacific Oceans doesn't gel well generally with regional hegemons, regional Asian powers. Generally, it's just not something that's really, really nice in their view. And you look at how America entered the stage in that part of the world with Commodore Matthew Perry, literally sailing a gunship into the harbor in Japan and saying, you will open up your country to trade or we're going to start shelling you. So you can kind of understand where this cultural aversion to obeying American hegemonic power in Asia comes from.
Yeah. So what's going to happen from here? Well,
I don't know.
the freedom of navigation activities are going to continue.
FONOPS.
Just
say FONOPS. Just say it. Just say it. Yes.
So over the past year and a half, the United States has publicly conducted 5 freedom of navigation operations in South China Sea. The first 3 operations, the United States conducted operations challenging the illegal requirement that ships provide notification or obtain permission before transiting through another state's territorial sea under innocent passage. In the 4th freedom of navigation, the US challenged excessive straight baseline claims. This document has not yet been described. Straight baselines is outlined by UNCLOS. And in the 5th and most recent one, the United States challenged the existence of an illegal territorial sea. So America is just continuing to push and push and push. And this has ramifications for Australia. So from abc.net.au, only a couple of days ago, entitled Australia Pressured to Participate in South China Sea Operation. Defence Minister Linda Reynolds and Foreign Minister Maurice Payne will be likely to discuss the regional flashpoint with US Secretary of State and US Defence Secretary at the annual AusMin talks in Washington. Now, the US has been conducting an increasing number of FONOPs in the South China Sea and has made no secret that it would like to see other nations, including Australia, do the same. This is a quote. We would always like to see more like-minded countries participate because then it builds the international consensus that puts pressure on the People's Republic of China to conform to that international consensus, said one senior US official. Successive Australian governments have directed naval vessels to sail through the South China Sea, but never within 12 nautical miles of land features claimed by Beijing. But that could all change in a heartbeat.
Hey, when we talk about anonymous sources, I know we've only got one more episode left. Let's just give them a name like Steve or Kirk or something. So
done. So when it says anonymous sources, you just want me to say a name?
Yeah, like Kirk or Bob. But the same one every time.
Yeah, okay. Cool. All right. So, ladies and gents,
with the news.
So that is the South China Sea. I have personally thoroughly enjoyed reading up about the South China Sea, understanding sort of a little bit of what's happening there. And like everything, what has taken me by surprise, really the history of it. Now, obviously the South China Sea has been there for a long time, joke that I tried before. I think it landed well. But the history of the tension, the history of the debate, and the countries that have historic claims there really blew me away. I was just like, France, what? Why is that here? And then Vietnam thrown in, the complexities there, World War II complexities, just the complexities of it all are fascinating, and just open my eyes to no wonder there's so much confusion over what is happening in the Straits now. The second thing that I loved learning about was how important the South China Sea is to the world economy. Now, it's no surprise that it's important to the world economy, but I wasn't aware of the scale that this fraction of the Pacific Ocean was important to the entirety of the world. And when you're talking about a third of all trade that goes through there, we're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, almost as much money as we make for doing this show.
Almost. We could probably. Why don't we just buy the South China Sea without?
We could and rent it
rent it out to people. We would save lives.
And then the last thing that I really enjoyed reading up about, it was all in that one article that you put up the link for from the Belfer Center, was just what is UNCLOS? How does it define land features? What is territory? What is contiguous? And what is exclusive economic zones? Which Dave Duckett confirmed. Everything is within the 200 meter. Everything is within the 200 nautical mile economic zone. It's 12 and then 12 all within the 200, just to make sure everyone gets that. That was fascinating to learn about. And then how they're using that law of the sea to show the world and to show to China that they must uphold this rules-based global international order. So the South China Sea has been fascinating to look at. And you know what? Even more fascinating at the end of this season, because this tension between China and America has really been a theme of pretty much every episode that we've done. We're up to episode 18, and it's been fascinating, but we haven't had we talked about it a bit for China and India, but we haven't had much about a piece of territory that's being fought over. We talked about a lot of competition. We talked a lot about conflict, et cetera, but this one has been fascinating because it's an old school piece of geography that there's a lot of claim, a lot of territory, a lot of fighting, a lot of history, and could be the spark that sets this barn on fire, or is just one of many sparks that could be lit at any time. So that is my summary of the South China Sea. How say you, Mick Cook?
Well, mate, look, it was interesting learning about it during the show. So it's good.
Yeah.
Good. The South China Sea has been fascinating, and I've had guests on the other show. It's far more popular than this one. Several times. That have talked about this either specifically or talked about it in reference to other elements. And the South China Sea is something that people need to understand is it affects your life more than you know. And it's not just a news bulletin on the evening news or on your Facebook news feed or your Twitter news feed. It's very real, and you probably want to understand a little bit about it because if it goes south,
sorry.
Oh yeah. Seems someone liked it. If it goes pear-shaped, then this draws in a major conflict amongst many nations. There's not going to be a limited conflict in terms of number of players, right? Because 100,000 ships go through there annually. So break that down by 365 and you get a number. And that's how many ships are going through there daily.
I think it's a great case study because you have the ability to choose. There's not two sides of this. There's many sides that you can choose on this. And because I did it with my wife, I sort of was talking to her about this afternoon, and she was picking a side, right? She's like, well, why would America do freedom navigation operations? What are they trying to do? Right. Or you could have the China side. Why would America come here? This is the other side of the globe. Why is it important for economy? There's so many different camps that you could see it in over the sea.
So many 274 ships a day in terms of trading vessels.
Yeah.
And then you have several navies trying to play a very delicate balance of freedom of navigation operations, which you have to be very, very careful. You talked about the Australian direction there, right? So the Australian government has directed naval operations, but not within 12 nautical miles of territory claimed by Beijing. So that's still pretty delicate weaving when you're weaving around,
hundreds of islands.
Hundreds of islands, possibly 274 ships, because you might be there at peak hour. I think peak hour is about 3 o'clock.
That's a naval term, yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a tricky situation, right? People are saying, oh, that's excellent. We've got listeners and lecturers who are in the same class on the show. So, and someone's just outed themselves. Phil has just outed himself as using us as a reference. Look, when we were going through these courses, people referenced our show and they got pats on the back. I know people this year have referenced our show and they got slammed. Do not reference us. We are not the people you want the advice from. We are not the experts.
We're like Wikipedia. Yeah. We'll give you the tip of the top of the tip of the wave top.
Yeah, that's right. That's
but
right.
you need to go deeper, people.
No one's checking our homework. But yeah, so that's kind of like the South China Sea is so fascinating because it's so important. People are probably tired of it appearing in the news, but it appears in the news because 60% of the world's maritime trade goes through there, which is 60% of the world's trade, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if my percentages are correct there, but let's just say it is.
It's good. Yeah. It's 150% correct. All right. So there you go.
The least correct I've ever been.
So there you have it. That's our take on the South China Sea. It's been fun. Great chat as always. So many people on YouTube joining us. Thank you all. The Andrew Cars, Phil Bizardo, Josh, Beck Marlowe, Josh Phelan, Mick, TDP Studios, Dave Duckett.
Duckett.
And all those peeps that join us and keep
this
conversation going.
Oh yeah, old Scarnan was on. Josh was on.
Scarnan was there as well.
And Richie was on as well.
He's a legend. But if you have liked this episode, please share it with your friends and family. My dear mother listens to it. I get a call every Saturday afternoon. She gives me a summary about what she likes, what she didn't like, and tells Mick to stop interrupting me. So, Mick,
tell your son to take a breath so I don't have to.
Mick, why don't you tell us some social media stuff?
Yeah, right. So there's in 2004, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yep.
Oh, you don't need the history of it, right?
No. You're
next week, I'm just going to plug all the stuff I've published on social media, not on social media, but studies, and that way, I'm just going to boost my numbers. No, so ladies and gents, we are on social media. We are. Well, I can be a prick on social media, but that's okay because that's what social media is for, right? Although I would like to point out that any of those trolls that are currently coming for the mill Twitter national security community and targeting females, I'm coming after you. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to start finding your LinkedIn pages and putting them out there. So it's great. So there's been a bit of trolling of the national security community here in Australia a bit. So I'm going to do my best to find them. So please, if you are a troll, follow us on Facebook at War for Idiots. Just type it in the search bar because I don't want to read out the web address, but it's just really, really easy. Facebook, War for Idiots, Google it. Like I've said to Josh before, if you want to know something, just go to Google. They know everything. You can find our individual Twitter pages. You can follow Richie and have a really nice conversation at Richie_T. You can follow me and find out how the real world works at Mick_Cook. And you can actually follow the show one, which is probably the best option. Richie's probably the second best option. I'm probably down near 10. But follow War #4 Idiots. So it's at War #4 Idiots. Follow it. Recommend us to everyone. Say good day to your mum because Richie's mum doesn't like me.
Can I give everyone an example of a Mick Cook interaction on social media? Some legend who listens to this show tweeted, "Hey guys, thanks for the good work that you're doing on the show. Could you please post your references? I'm too lazy to write them down and I want to read them." And Mick's reply was, "Let us help you build a bridge across that laziness by telling you to look it up yourself." Or something along the lines of that.
Come on, look, He thought his problem was that we weren't providing the notes, but the problem is the guy's lazy. So I'm trying to help him. I'm trying to help him.
It's great.
I'm a life
It
coach,
was great.
man. Yeah, and for all those people telling me to shave, I don't have to shave.
Yeah. I think it looks magnificent. Keep it, man.
Yeah.
Keep it.
And we can't be the bald and the bearded.
That's right. There you go, Mum. All right. Well, ladies and gents, we hope you've enjoyed this show. If you have, leave a review. If you've liked it, share the episode.
Yeah.
If you've disagreed with us, start a conversation.
Yeah.
It's all about different aspects, different perspectives. We don't know
Leave
everything.
a positive review.
Yeah, we don't know everything. I think we do. I think everyone knows we know most things, but we don't know everything. So we certainly love the debates that the conversations generate, and we purposely don't choose a side because we want to hear what you guys think about the topics we speak about. So coming up next week,
I choose a side that isn't Rich's.
choose a side that's right. Coming up next week will be our final episode. Make sure you don't miss it. Join us, and until next time, this is Rich,
and this is Mick.
And remember that we may be idiots,
but so are you.
War for Idiots is a TDP production. All opinions expressed by individuals on the podcast are those of the individual and not necessarily representative of any other organisation. The music used during War for Idiots is Fireworks by Jazar and is used under an Attribution Share Alike 3.0 international license.